The calls often come late. Someone has ignored their letters from the IRS, missed too many loan payments, or watched their small business slowly bleed out. They don't open with legal questions. They ask if there's a way out. For over 30 years, Barry Levine has answered that question with calm, practical advice. A Massachusetts based bankruptcy attorney, he works with individuals and small business owners navigating serious financial strain, people who are scared, out of options, and unsure what the next steps even look like. His work isn't about judgment or quick fixes. It's about helping people understand what tools are available, how the system works, and what choices they can still make. What Barry sees again and again is that fear, not just debt, is what traps people. The legal process has structure, options, and predictable outcomes. What derails most clients is the panic that keeps them frozen in place. Barry's role is to bring order to the chaos. With each case, he applies decades of legal experience to help clients understand what's happening, what's possible, and how to move forward with strategy that restores both stability and control. What's up, my financially intentional people? I'm joined with Barry Levine today. We're going to talk about a very important topic, something that's near and dear to me, which is bankruptcy. And I personally have gone through a bankruptcy. And as of late, I have been asked the question at least once a week. Should I file for bankruptcy? What would that look like for me? And so I thought it was important to bring in an expert, someone with 45 years plus of experience in the bankruptcy realm to walk us through what that looks like and also to just give us guidance to see possibly is this something that you need to do to just decrease the stigmas around it. So thank you so much, Barry, for joining us. You're a wealth of knowledge already. I'm so excited for this conversation. So personally, my story was when I was 25, I had 5 houses because I did all of the things that people told me I was supposed to do as a young person.
How to buy real estate, no money down?
That part, all of that. And it was the subprime lending boom, right? We had all of these products out there that was encouraging us to take on all of this debt because that's how you invest. That's the American dream. You build wealth through real estate. And that's the only thing that I knew. It was the only way my grandfather and my uncles, they invested, they bought real estate because that was the only thing that they had access to. So that's all I knew. And I got to a point where I was up to my neck in these mortgages. The houses weren't being rented. And so I got to a place where I was forced to do 2 short sales and 2 foreclosures. In the process of that, even though we had gotten to a legal agreement, one of the banks kept on reporting my mortgage as late. One of the banks that I short sold on kept on reporting my mortgage as late, every month late. Now, if you've ever had a late payment on a mortgage, you know that takes your credit down 100 points every time. So imagine you only have 800 points max on your credit score. Right. How many times a month a company can do that? And the only recourse I had at that time, they told me, was you have to file bankruptcy to get these people removed because I tried every intervention. And that's why I ultimately had to file bankruptcy because even though these things were resolved, the debt was resolved, all those things, they kept on hitting my credit. And I think it was just like a glitch in the system, but like the only way, honestly, the only way to get them removed off my credit was to file bankruptcy. And so that's my personal story. And I did it in my 20s. And now I can fully say through all of the things that I've been through financially, it wasn't as detrimental to me as I thought it would be. But I know that was over 15 years ago now. And I don't know if the landscape has changed, bringing you on. Yeah.
What motivates a lot of people to file bankruptcy is the anxiety of owing money.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's only money. It's not your health. It's not your job. And 99% of the creditors, American Express, Bank of America, all these other banks, they'll afford the loss. And then adding insult to injury from a debtor's point of view, they'll then, 5 years after the debtor has received their discharge, will sell the loan to somebody else who now be dunning them for money, not realizing they filed bankruptcy.
Ooh.
But Oh, yeah. And usually those letters come on a Saturday, and usually I'm asleep on a Saturday. You can't get me. The fact is, it's not the end of the world. There's just so much a creditor can do. Do you know anything about the collection process?
I do loosely.
So every step of the way, they have to send you a notice.
Yeah.
And every time you get a notice, the notice says, if you dispute this, the amount due, send us it in writing. And listen, it doesn't cost you. You have a computer, you have a printer, you send them a form letter. So now they send you every invoice that you've ever incurred on that charge. And yet you still don't pay it because you don't have any money. I'll send it to a collection agency.
Mm-hmm.
What does the collection agency do? Send you the same notice. You just change the address on the demand for verification, and you
Yeah.
send that same response. They now have to ask the original creditor for the information and send you all the direct that they have for the account. You don't pay that either. See, people don't realize the process can be endless. You don't pay that either. And now they send it to an attorney. And oftentimes, you live in California, the attorney is in Illinois. So what? And maybe they file suit in Illinois. But first, that attorney has to send you that same letter, giving you the opportunity to dispute the debt. And now they file suit. Filing suit, it's more of a nuisance than anything else, especially if you owe the money, but you don't have any defense to it when you're a debtor. And it puts people in panic, but ultimately, even when they get a judgment, it doesn't get them paid. Too many people, the reality of bankruptcy is one thing. When too many people hear what their friend heard and they researched it and they look this up and they look that up, and it's all bullshit. The creditors, basically, we sit here now for the 341 meetings, excuse me, the debtors, and they'll be sitting behind me cutting out my Quaalude jar, which is one of my very nice, it's original. And you even know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Very
I
nice.
do.
Very nice. A young lady like yourself. And they sit behind me, and everybody's on the screen. No creditors show up. And basically, we sort of schmooze. They ask you questions. They ask you if you own real estate. They ask you what led to the bankruptcy filing. But you've been through it yourself. Maybe California is different, but in an assetless case, which 99% of them are, they get $65. So how much
Right.
time is a trustee going to spend? Too many debtors or potential debtors have the fear of the unknown. They don't know. I don't tell them about the ritual sacrifices and all this other stuff. We like to keep that for the end of the day when they're done with the 341 meeting and we have the pig roast. But the process itself, when people come to consult with me, what I tell them is, if you retain me today, 4 months from now, if we filed your case today, 4 months from now, you'll get your discharge. And they really don't miss a beat. If you have a house and you want to keep the house, in Massachusetts, we happen to have a very good Homestead Act, which protects up to $1 million worth of equity in a primary residence. So when most people, if they're have any seichel, they record a homestead, costs $35 here, and when they file a bankruptcy with respect to the house, because they're all worried, what's going to happen to the house? You show the trustee the appraised value of the house, you show the trustee the mortgage statements of the house, and you show the trustee the homestead, which covers up to $1 million worth of equity. And at that point, when you go through the bankruptcy, the trustee doesn't even bat an eyelash. The same thing with the cause. The only time in a bankruptcy that you can have problem if you have unexempt assets. Unexempt assets is something that you either have to do what they call pre-bankruptcy planning and deal with them before you're going to file, or you're going to pay the piper. And of course, it's not, again, it's none of this is the end of the world because we're only dealing with money. Generally, in a case, and I've had this happen a number of times, where there is equity that you can't protect. Like I had a case a number of years ago where the debtors were in the process of getting a divorce. And I suggest they had a house on the Cape and they lived outside of Boston. And I suggested that since you're getting a divorce, you can't have more than one homestead in Massachusetts. Why doesn't one of you take up residence at the Cape House, file a homestead, and we can protect them both in the bank?
Mm-hmm.
Who listens to me?
Didn't do it.
My client had a nice father who had some money, and the
Mm-hmm.
trustee turned around and decided there was X number of dollars worth of equity in the place on the Cape, and he bought his interest back. No,
Oh.
because at least around here, the best thing, like I said, I'm what they call a Schwerarbeiter. I was always that person. If I worked, I would be an A+ student, but I never liked to work. And in the law business, no, if you can make money without lifting a finger, that's the path of least resistance. If the debtor is going to buy the property back, why go through an auction? Why go through
Right.
the vagaries of the public market?
Right.
It's a very cynical process.
I understand. So, from a perspective, when we talked about what we talked about pre recording, was right now, a lot of people are in a position where they're in survival mode and they're in a place where their debts fully outstrip what they earn. And like I said, a lot of people are coming to me on a weekly basis. Is bankruptcy even an option? What do you tell people what the parameters are for if and when they can file bankruptcy?
It really comes down to income. There are there's three types of bankruptcies an individual can file. I won't talk about the Chapter 11s because they're very annoying, but Chapter 7s and Chapter 13s, and they're all guided by IRS statistics. And I can take out my little chart. So, for instance, if you're a household of one, everything consists of the household, how many people live in the household. So, if you're a household of one and you make more than $83,000 in change, you have to go through the complete means test, and
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely a Chapter 13 candidate, which is called a wage earner plan. So, what happens in that, if you're above the median, you wind up paying what some computer program determines is your surplus income to your creditors over 5 years. It's like my
Mm-hmm.
father used to say, if he had wheels, he'd be a baby carriage. Sometimes it has nothing to do with reality. But most people, especially if you get into multiples in households, that number goes up quite a bit. And generally, we know going in whether you're a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. A lot of Chapter 13s are filed because people who have mortgage arrears, as long as they start making their current mortgage payments in the Chapter 13, can pay their mortgage arrears out over 5 years. But Chapter 7, like I said, you file the case, a month later you have your 341 meeting. The trustee doesn't really ask you a lot of heavy questions. It takes place like this by Zoom. They verify the information that you've given them. And when you're done, it's been decades since a creditor has shown up. The only time that happens if you happen to have a very pissed off creditor, but that's credit card companies. And then there's a second course. Before you can file, you have to take a first course, and then there's a second course you have to take, and you'll get your discharge. The trustee generally reports the case as an assetless case within 24, 48 hours of the 341 meeting, and life goes on.
But wait, can you step back a little bit and just explain the difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 11? And if you want a Chapter 13, if you want to talk about the Chapter 11, I think, yeah.
Chapter 7 is a straight liquidation. Basically, you file the Chapter 7, the schedules, the statement of affairs, you list all your assets, you apply what exemptions, and 99% of the time, everything you have is exempt. And then 4 months later, you have the 341 meeting in about a month. You take that second course and you get your discharge. A Chapter 13 can either be income based if you're above the median, which sort of forces you. I tell you, it breaks my heart. I've had some people who make so much money they've paid 80, 90 cents on the dollar to their creditors. It just makes me nauseous. And, or, like I said, you can file a Chapter 13 to be able to pay your mortgage arrears out over 5 years. I just had an interesting case where she wanted to do that, but she had more mortgages than a Chapter 13 allowed, and we're in a Chapter 11, which the bureaucracy itself is, maybe people don't know, when you file a bankruptcy, there's the bankruptcy court, which you hope never to have to see. There's the Chapter 7 trustee who's been appointed to administer your case. And then there's the Office of the United States Trustee. They're from the government and they're here to help. They oversee the administration of things. They look to see whether, for instance, I filed a case for a woman who had been a very high earner. Her husband's a high earner. And then suddenly she was not so high an earner. She was doing contract work. You know, when you're making $250,000, you can keep all the balls in the air. When you're making $48,000 and you hope to have the job after 6 weeks, it's tough. And to add insult to injury, they have 2 children who are developmentally disabled. And she was spending a lot of money. And I knew, because that's what the trustee's office looks at to see abuse and things like that. She had a lot of debt, and I knew they were going to make an inquiry. So I figured I'd be smart. I filed the Chapter 13 to hopefully avoid that. When it turned out her Chapter 13 couldn't be feasible and we converted the case to a Chapter 7, that's when they did their inquiry. And it turned out they allowed her to get a discharge because under the federal law, all the money, don't ask where she had to schlep these kids from where she lived in Massachusetts up into New Hampshire, and they allowed her to get a discharge. Otherwise, most cases don't have all that drama.
Yeah. Most cases are pretty straightforward.
Well, there's my Bitcoin.
Your Bitcoin. Oh, Lord.
But that's another story for another day.
Let's not.
You can have me back on the 1,800 Bitcoins, and he's a Chapter 7.
Oh, my God. Is that real? Oh, my God. No, we can't. We don't have the capacity for that today. No, but I know we were talking pre-recording and you were saying that in all of your years, 40 plus years of being a bankruptcy attorney, you've seen more cases now than ever. What do you think is contributing to that?
I happen to think, for lack of a better word, the economy sucks.
There it is. There it is.
People aren't making money. Social Security just covers so much. And to me, one of the unfortunate things, listen, the young, again, I sound like my father, young people who file a bankruptcy, nowadays, when someone files a bankruptcy, creditors look at you because maybe you were making 40, 50 grand, maybe even more, as not a bad credit risk because you can't file a bankruptcy again for 8 years. So they'll give you a credit card. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that you have. It's a fact of life. The credit card companies drive these people crazy. To me, that's a very good source of business because people don't know that there's, aside from nudging you, there's not much they can do to you. And once they retain us, then the creditors all have to call me. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I learned many decades ago is I don't bullshit the creditors that the client's going to send a check, that they're going to do this. I basically tell them they have no money. Go sue them. Have a nice day.
That's right, Barry.
All it's going to do is make some lawyer money.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know if they must have it in California. So now I get a judgment against somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And in the perfect world, the sheriff shows up at your house with the judgment and say, wait a minute, let me get my checkbook. And I write out a check for $75,000 and no problem. And I know there's no perfect world. So the sheriff goes back with his execution and judgment unsatisfied. What happens next in Massachusetts is they can summons you into debtor's court. It's called supplementary process. So if you're on Social Security, and you have this $75,000 judgment against you, what is a judge going to order you to pay? You barely have enough money to put food on the table and pay your rent. And maybe you're living in a assisted housing in some town. It's the peace of mind. The one thing that the clients, there's some satisfaction we get. I'm doing God's work, actually. You'll see me on the Mount every Tuesday and Thursday. That's when they open the Ark. That's when I'm usually there. But the thing is, the things they make people feel about owing money, it's terrible. And none of it is real.
I think that's the part of society. That's how society is set up, right? It's capitalism, right? You have to make people feel this social obligation. It's a social credit system, okay? That's if you owe this money and you don't pay it back, you're a bad person morally. Meanwhile, these corporations, Elon Musk is getting all these write-offs. They do all of these things. They know the game. So it's really about what you know. And so that's why this whole platform exists, is because I feel like there's this gatekeeping that happens for the people that know, like the people that know that they can just retain you and be like, I'm paying you 50 cents.
Not even 50 cents.
Right. Right.
Well, I used to have a letter when I was a young lawyer because, listen, nobody, even though I'm very entertaining, I have a nice shtick, nobody wants to file a bankruptcy.
Right.
And I used to have a letter that I would send out to creditors saying where my client would like to pay you 10 cents on the dollar, which is 10 cents more than you're going to get if they file a bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And credit card companies would come back with, no, we'll take 60%. And I said, you don't seem to understand.
And just be like, okay, so just take us to court. Yeah.
You'll have credit card companies when somebody will actually want to work something out. A debtor will try to work something out and lower their payments because they can't afford the greater payments. And the credit card company will tell them, your income shows that you can't make the lower payment. But I've been making the greater payment. You would think logically the lower payment would be the easy one to make. One of the reasons I keep Kafka on my desk.
That's so understandable. The thing is that there's so many people out there that just don't know what their options are.
They should see a bankruptcy attorney.
Also, yes. And that's the whole thing, is that that's scary to most people. Getting to the point where someone like me, I have a role of attorneys and I'm just like, call my attorney. You know what I'm saying? But I had to get there. I had to get to that level. Most people aren't there because, again, they have this like social currency that says, if I do that, then I can't do X, Y, and Z because that's what society is telling me. Now, I know that there's merit to paying off your debt if you can and doing the things that you can if you're able to. But if you're in a financial situation where you're overburdened by these debts, you do have some recourse. So, like, where do you draw that line for people?
The thing is, it's when basically you're making the minimum payments to the credit card companies, you're missing the minimum payments to the credit card companies. And to me, most essential is paying your necessarily expenses, rent, mortgage, food, the car. So the credit card companies and your loans and all that, and I include even people you know that you've lent money to, you have to live. That's more important. You know, and if they've lent money, it's the cynic in me says, if you lend money, yeah, you can expect the money back, but you can also expect to lose it.
Yeah, that's why my rule of thumb is I don't give money that I don't consider a gift.
It shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
And you can't, what we're encountering now is a lot of people, you happen to hit the nail on it's a fairly simple process. I really shouldn't give trade secrets away, but it isn't the end of the world.
Right.
And we've encountered a lot of people, they overthink things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we ask for bank statements, it's a simple question. It's not that difficult. If we need W-2s, it shouldn't come with an explanation.
Yeah,
But too many people, it's assets and liabilities. It's like my classic story of the person who once came to me and said, do I have to tell you about the property I own in Maine? Well, now you do.
Yeah. If I didn't know, I didn't know.
It's on the other, exactly. On the other, I only know what I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So my thing is that I want people to be responsible, right? For example, I have a friend whose a child's mom owes just $120,000 in credit card debt. But I feel like if she goes through like the bankruptcy process, she's just going to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again.
So they file bankruptcy again. I've done it in my practice now 4 times over 45 years. The thing is, what I find unfortunate is that, when I first started out, you had the people who, knew they can go and use their credit card and charge it up, or they took cruises and they went here and there. Most people, even people with $120,000 worth of debt, it's usually for some sort of necessities, one way or the other. No? Really?
She just has a shopping addiction, honestly.
No, but when you get down, it's only things. What she'll find out when she files a bankruptcy, what we consider the value of fine clothes. It works better when you fill out the Salvation Army form than reality.
Exactly. For me, as a person who wants people to be financially responsible, or is teaching people like you have to change these kind of mindset things in order to be a person that builds real wealth instead of continuing to be on the cycle, there still needs to be like a level of responsibility around like how you interact. What I want people to understand is there is recourse if you're struggling. You don't have to continue struggling, and you can use bankruptcy as a tool to get where you need to go.
Listen, I've had people who have, because very often, which is also a story for another day, there's a small business involved that goes out of business.
Mm-hmm.
The person goes bankrupt. Lots of people like you, entrepreneurial people. So these are very often the people who filed 4 times over my 45 years. One business failure after another. But you can always start again. It gives you that option. The bankruptcy, you have to look at it really as a business planning tool, because one, if you have debts like a mortgage on a house that you're going to keep, or you have car loans that you're going to keep, that stands in your credit going forward, because now, especially only if you reaffirm the debt, because once again, why I keep Kafka on my desk, I had a client couldn't reaffirm the debt. You know what reaffirming the debt means? It means that it survives your bankruptcy. Otherwise, it would be discharged. When he filed, it was in the aughts, computer company failure. He had no income. He had a house that was seriously underwater. Somehow he couldn't reaffirm the debt because the court wouldn't approve it. Somehow he managed to make 10 years worth of payments, and the mortgage rates came down, and he wanted to refinance. He went to his bank, the bank that he'd been making 10 years worth of payment. You can't make this up. 10 years worth of payments to. They pulled his credit report, and they said, we can't do that. You discharged this debt in your bankruptcy. But he'd been making 10 years worth of payments. He never reaffirmed the debt.
Oh, yeah. Because they wouldn't allow him to, right?
He couldn't, because the court wouldn't. And from a credit point of view, it showed as if it was long gone and he had never made a payment. It really is. You can look at it. I've had a number of people, they go through bankruptcy, they start something else, and now they start making money, or they start living more within their means. And then on the other hand, they're the folks it doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter. They're just gonna, yeah. So you got both ends of the spectrum. I just want people to okay, so people do go through the bankruptcy process and they do want to start building. They do want to keep their home and they do want to start investing and building. What is that process like? Okay. So with me, like I said, I went through 2 foreclosures, 2 short sales, filed the bankruptcy, and then 3 years after, I was all good to buy another house. What does that process usually look like, Abe?
Usually, from the feedback I get from my debtors, it can usually happen with 6 months to a year. They usually get new credit card solicitations fairly frequently. They buy houses within a year. It was a lot easier before the banks decided to do their last freak out over a decade ago, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing they'll find is you may not get the A interest rate, you may get
Yeah.
B
Mm-hmm.
interest rate or a C
Mm-hmm.
interest rate, but you'll get a loan. And the thing is, once they can get back in the market and show that they can make the payments on a regular basis, now after a year or two, they can refinance for a lower interest rate. But certainly isn't the end. I look at it like I think I said when we started, it's a business decision. Are you going to be an indentured servant? You make $1,000 a month and 1,200 is going to your creditors when you're cleaning windshields out on the Mass Pike or something like that? Or are you going to live like a mensch and pay for rent and pay for food and let the credit cards whistle? I can't see you think that you should keep a bankruptcy attorney on speed dial. Hey, here I am. There are a lot of, I don't answer the phone. I hate talking on the phone. Know that now. In a profession, really, in a profession where you have to talk on the phone,
That's
I
so
hate
funny.
it.
Oh, Barry, I could talk to you all day. I can't imagine.
You should call a banker. Don't be afraid. We don't bite. And in the final analysis, it's only money.
So, Barry, they've made the business decision. They say, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm going to file bankruptcy. How do they go about finding a bankruptcy attorney? Is it state based? Like, how does it work?
It's pretty much, when I was a young lawyer, I worked for a guy who used to write books, and we had clients all over the country, and he was known as the business doctor. He was a moron, very annoying person to work for. He ultimately dropped dead, but I won't go there. But he taught me a lot of all this stuff. We're pretty much state-based. I worked for the most part in Massachusetts. There was a time when I used to cross the border into New Hampshire. I don't even do that. Nowadays, I can handle cases throughout Massachusetts because of technology. It's easy to find a bankruptcy attorney someplace. When I represent a creditor, it's a treat, which is very rare for me. I do mostly debtors work, and that's the kind of. And the other thing you have to look out for when you retain my office, you get me, you get my assistant, this is just the two of us. There are a number of bankruptcy I've dealt with
the factories.
Not so much that they've never met the name attorney in the firm, which even now I will do a lot of intake by phone, belying what I just said. But even then, when they're in some place away from my office, the only thing I insist upon is that they meet me in person to sign their petition, because I'm old-fashioned, and that they come here for the 341 meeting, because I'd always rather have my debtor sitting behind me than sitting in their car on the Zoom meeting.
But can you represent people in different states?
I could always, anything is possible. Some states you have to associate with somebody local.
Okay.
But to me, I feel that there must be somebody like me who knows their way around bankruptcy in California, in New York. Every state has different exemptions. The Massachusetts homestead at $1 million, I think, is probably one of the most liberal in the country, short of the one that exists in Florida, which I still think is the best. You just move there.
Find somebody local, find somebody that knows the law, find somebody that is actually going to get to know you and your debt and your situation. Like, those are the things that you want to look for. What do you say when people are like, should I do bankruptcy versus like a credit card debt consolidation?
Oh, you should see all my podcasts on debt settlement. A waste of time.
Yeah.
If you're blind in your right eye and you're missing the middle finger on your left hand, we have a special debt settlement program for you. It's all bullshit. What they don't tell you with the debt settlement program is that the only thing they generally do is wind up getting themselves paid a fee. If they settle a case, and again, it depends on the kind of debt you have. If you have $50,000, $60,000 worth of debt and they settle $10,000 worth of debt, what good have they really done for you? The other thing is you get a forgiveness of debt, a 1099, when they settle a case, which can result in what the accountants call a taxable event. File
Mm.
a bankruptcy, it discharges by operation of law. There's no 1099 involved.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
To me, most cases are assetless cases.
Hmm.
Why pay them anything if you can just go through the process and not miss a beat?
So, what about now? We talked about this a little bit earlier too. We're at the information age, and do people need to have a bankruptcy lawyer, or could they represent themselves using a tool like an AI tool to help them through the
Well,
process?
there are, offhand, I don't know the names of them. I always say you get what you pay for. I think it can be done. Debtors counsel, it's the one thing I hate at the 341 meetings when there's a pro se debtor and they don't know what they're doing and it just takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
You don't know your way around the system. I've been doing this for a long time. Like I said, one of the trustees I used to play basketball with when we
You
were.
just slide up in there. So the relationships. It's like, what's up, Joe? We just about to discharge this. Let's just go.
It's the same
Yeah.
sort of thing people have with these people who have tax problems. They sign up for these tax settlement problems. They live in Massachusetts. They sign up for some place in Colorado. And you mean to tell me there's nobody in Massachusetts? I do that sort of stuff. Why would you want to retain somebody who's 2 time zones away, who may never return your call? Like I said, some of these bankruptcy, they never meet the named partner. They deal with an associate or a paralegal all the time.
So when people retain you, is it like a flat fee? Is it a portion of how much they owe? Usually, what that they should be looking for?
Nowadays, my fee is running around $2,500 to file a bankruptcy.
That's
Uh,
it. You're pretty affordable, Barry.
you can pay more. Hey,
But like in the home realm of things, like if I was this girl and I owed $125,000 in credit card debt, and that's a minimum payment on one of the credit cards, and I'll just be like, Barry, let me slide you the $2,500.
I wish I could charge the amount by the amount of debt. No, I mean it's $2,500. The filing fee, I think, is $338. We pull a credit report and we pull an appraisal if you have real estate. Of course, in a perfect world, they'll say, who do I make the check out to? But being an inveterate cynic, as you can tell, and from Brooklyn, we start jerking around, running interference with their creditors. We take a $250 deposit. We just ask that they pay the balance out over 6 months. We don't charge interest or penalties. And we run interference with their creditors, which is the one thing that's really nagging them.
What I'm hearing is basically we have more hesitation than we need to when it comes to bankruptcy. And if it's something that you really feel like you're struggling financially, it's one of the first things you should do is try to find a reliable bankruptcy attorney and talk to them about the possibility of filing bankruptcy. And the process is more straightforward, and there should be no negative connotation around bankruptcy.
You either you make it so you have to pay food. You're going to pay the credit cards. They can suffer.
And so I've learned a lot. Like I said, it's been over 15 years since I filed my bankruptcy, but I remember that relief. And I remember feeling like, I wish I would have known about this sooner. And like I said, for me, it was just so that I can just even get to a starting place again after I had been going through that foreclosure and stuff. So for me, it was more of a no brainer. But for a lot of people, it's just, I know I took out this debt and I know I owe it. Is it wrong for me to file bankruptcy?
To me, I don't make moral decisions. You have to do what you have to do. And the one thing that my clients tell me, sometimes we sit 3 people here waiting for a 341 meeting.
Mm-hmm.
When they're done, they'll say, "That's it."
Yep.
The trustees, for the little money they get, they're not there. Like I mentioned, basketball. Like the kid couldn't play, but it was his basketball. If you didn't let him play, he would take the basketball home. That's not what they do. I remember a number of years ago seeing on the news here, it was like a bankruptcy abuse and this, that. The guy owned a fancy condominium in downtown Boston. It was worth $5 million. It had an $8 million mortgage on it. He went bankrupt and got to keep the condo. There's no equity. What are they going to do? Sell it?
You know what? I am not mad at that at all. I'm not mad at that at all.
There's a certain benefit to being judgment-proof.
Yeah.
Lots of business people, and everything's in the wife's name, everything's in this name, but then they go bankrupt. If they do it right, life goes on.
Yeah. I really feel like a lot of the things in the finance space is really about what you know, and it's certain rules that I feel like a lot of people aren't privy to. And so I love being able to have this platform.
The thing is, it's along those lines. I never go into district court. I never go into superior court. And there are attorneys who practice in these courts. They know the clerks, they know this one, they know that one. It makes a big difference. It's like if you want something done in whatever town you live in, knowing the guy who does all the work before the town council is the guy to go to. Not the Jewish guy from the big city.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, is that I think being able to unlock one of those things, those rules in that rule book that we didn't necessarily read or have access to, or I know I didn't growing up, is like really important to me. And I really feel like you unlocked that for me and a lot of my listeners. So I really appreciate that, because the more or the closer I can get to people being on a same like level playing field when it comes to their money, the more successful I think people can be. And I really just think that like to remove that stigma around bankruptcy.
There are no secrets.
There's no secrets. I think that that is true. But also, if you don't know, you don't know. And what you don't have access to and exposure to, you just don't. And I really like being that conduit. And I thank you for being willing to share and being explicit about it and just being like, listen, you can either do this or you can do this and solve all your problems. And this is what I have done for these people who have these multi-millions and they don't blink an eye. You know what I'm saying? And so that's important to me.
And the thing is, a number of years ago, I ran into somebody who had a liquor store that went out of business. And he proudly told me his story, how he paid, that he wasn't personally liable on all these. It was just corporate liability. He spent 4 years paying off all his company's debt.
And he was so proud of that.
And I said, why did you bother? There was no need. It's not, when you have a good credit score, it's not like they give you a gold star.
You know what? This reminds me. Okay, I told you I was a nurse, but I'm a labor and delivery nurse, and it reminds me of the story. I tell people, like, you're having a baby is gonna hurt like hell, but we have the solution. It's called an epidural. You can get it. You can enjoy your pregnancy, and guess what? You're going to get the same result. And whether you have the pain or whether you don't have the pain, you don't get a reward at the end for going through the pain and suffering. Because let me tell you, having a baby naturally might be a great experience. If you really want to go high five Jesus and come back down, you want to go towards the light. That's what you want to do. But you got to understand, it's going to hurt and you're not going to get a reward at the end. And so that is the analogy that I kept on playing in my head when you're saying all these things. Yes, you can go through all of that stuff. You're going to do all of that stuff. You can play all this stuff back. You can get all of the accolades, and you can think that you're getting accolades. But in the meantime, all you're doing is running around in circles when you could have just resolved this problem.
You're being a schmuck. That's all you're really doing. I represented a guy, he had some business, I don't know, sold tchotchkes on Amazon and all this other stuff. And he was a bankruptcy candidate, and he was too concerned about his credit score.
A lot of people are. That's what I'm saying, the social currency.
See, and I happen to always say that you should try, which is easier said than done nowadays, to develop a relationship with a small bank that could look at you as an individual, not necessarily a FICO score, and could sense you up as maybe you had a hard time now and maybe not then. Those banks are few and far between.
I have one. I have my bank that's across the street from my house. I can go there and I can be like, hey, this is the situation. This is what I need. And they do that. And it's because I have a small credit union. It's across the street from my house.
See,
Yeah, credit. That's why I love credit unions.
I had a bank like that. They went out of business.
Oh, yeah. That's us.
You needed a car loan?
Yeah.
What time you want to come by to pick up the note? No
That's
problem.
how it is. That is exactly how it is. I go in there, I'm like, hey, this interest rate is like way too high.
That's what people post bankruptcy, if you can find something like that or develop something like that, that's very important, because nowadays, the bank, nobody in the bank. They don't know you. You call them up, they have no idea. That's the thing, that personal, even though, it takes time, that personal stuff is what's missing in a large part. And people having financial problems shouldn't be afraid to tell people. It's not the end of the world. You'd be surprised. You find out.
That part right there.
You find out how many people, when you start talking about it, it's like when people who talk about a disease, everybody suddenly has the disease.
That's exactly what happened to me last week. I was at a retreat, and one person asked me about bankruptcy, and I was like, yeah, I did it. It wasn't a big deal. This is what happened. This is how it is. And they were just like, can I do it? And I was like, yeah, you can. And then everybody else at the table was like, wait, this is what's happening to me. And this is what's happened to me. And I just feel like we assign so much shame around money issues. And again, I just really feel like it is a certain thing that we always have to have these worker bees. We always have to have these people that in this society that feel like they have to be these cogs in the wheel, where a lot of people are just like, we don't have to do that. And why are we doing that?
It pays to be mellow like me.
Exactly. Be more like Barry. What would Barry do? That's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a shirt made.
I tell you, if people are interested, like I said, I've done a lot of podcasts about bankruptcy. It's on YouTube, because I wrote a book too, Bankruptcy Through the Looking Glass, which is the reality of it all. And those are my podcasts. I got a lot of them.
That's very important, Barry. So share those resources if they want to find you. Bankruptcy Through the Looking Glass, your podcast. Just search Barry Levine. Do you have an Instagram page, Barry?
I think I do, but I don't know about it.
Oh my God.
I have no clue. Just point me in the right direction.
I have all of your resources.
I enjoyed this very much.
I did too. But I'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. And this episode will probably come out in a couple of weeks. I'm going to preview it to my little special community tonight, because I really feel like this information is very timely, especially for right now.
Hey, it's always nice to listen to a nice Jewish attorney with a face like this. Only a bubby can
You're
love.
so funny. But anyway, Barry, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
This was fun.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.